This is Jordan Tower with JTNEWS. Well, Camron went live tonight and just basically told his side of the story. Now, he exposed a lot of what Jim Jones said as lies, but I gotta give Camron this. He's a real G because he started it all off by saluting Jim Jones. Like, I'm proud of you for your Rock Nation deal. I'm happy you won. I want you to win. We were bros. We still are bros. No love lost. I saw the funny style moves, and I had to distance myself. I mean, and he admitted his wrong. So, but he saluted him on the Rock Nation deal and said, the only thing that upset me is you got your Rock Nation deal, and then the next day you went to Flex and you talked about me for an hour and a half, and you threw my name under the bus. I mean, what was that about? You should have went to Flex, announced your Rock Nation deal, and then did a freestyle or something. But instead, you went on Funk Flex and talked about me for an hour and 15 minutes. So basically, he started with the whole Dipset thing. Now, Jim Jones really stressed in the beginning of that interview how he got in shootouts over Cam and how, all that stuff. He got in shootouts over Cam and how he organized soldiers and basically did everything for Cam. So Camron was like, wait. First of all that was because of Luque Braze. If you don't remember who Luque Braze is, he was a major member of Dipset, and Camron even said, I got to start shouting him out more because he doesn't get his just due. Luque Braze knew Cam from when Cam was on his first record deal with Epic. I think it was Epic, yeah. He would be going down to Harlem getting fresh. He lived in Jersey. He would be going down to Harlem getting fresh, and you would always see Luque Braze pumping the tapes, right? Now, when it was time for Cam found out that he was getting robbed by his Epic deal, right? By someone at Epic. They told him about, like, yo, you're not getting all your money. They're over here, not paying you all your money. So Camron wanted off his deal. So Luque Braze got some people together, and they all went down to the Epic office, and they got out of that deal. They applied the pressure. Also, he addresses, when I got kicked out of college, I had plenty of places to stay in Harlem. I'm from Harlem. Will we hang out at Jim Jones's house, me, Bloodshed? So from there, it was already debunked. Jim Jones, Camron did not live with Jim Jones in his house. He only hung out there. That was like the hangout spot. Camron has said that in the past. Also, I think Jim Jones said that. He said there was some inconsistencies between Jim Jones' stories on the Breakfast Club and the Flex and all that. So anyways, then next, Mace distanced himself from Jim Jones because Jim Jones was hanging with people that were talking shit about Mace, right? And Mace found out about this. He said, oh, you're going to hang out with people that talk shit about me? I'm going to distance myself from you. So then he told Cam, you can continue to hang out with him, but I'm not going to hang out with him. I don't like his style. Then he said, I understand now why Mace, after Mace got his Bad Boy deal, I was holding Mace down, Camron, and I understand why he got kind of funny after a while because, he was making $10-20 million, didn't know what to do with that. I mean, he was doing weird shit like getting a private jet that hold 10 people and taking it by himself, but I understand that now because, he was young with $10-20 million and, he understood everything else. He saluted Mace. Then, he talked about, getting out of his Epic deal, so he got that with Luque Braze, and Jim Jones was always the hype man. He wasn't his manager. He said his manager was Chris Lighty. It was not Jim Jones, So Jim Jones wasn't his manager. He was basically just his hype man, and his homie, And then Damon Dash, we've heard this story. Damon Dash got him his deal at Rockefeller. He reached out to Dame, even though Dame and Camron had a fallout before his Epic deal. He went over to Dame and said, yo, I rap and everything, I need a deal, and he gave him a deal, right? Because he always saw Dame had a vision, and Dame made all of his visions come true. He used to talk wild, crazy shit in the 80s and 90s, and then all of a sudden, all these things came true. He said, this guy's a smart motherfucker, right? But when he got his Rockefeller deal in the beginning, they didn't have any money, right? So Luque Braze introduced him to somebody in that actually, what was his name, Winter or something like that. And anyways, he this guy was from Columbus, Ohio. He lived in Harlem. So he started going out to Columbus because he said he heard about Columbus. He ended up getting a crib out there, and they got a club, right? And Freaky Zeke ran the club, and it started making a lot of money, and this enabled Camron to push Dipset forward. Now, Jim Jones didn't go to Ohio. He said he stayed back in New York to make money. Jewels and Freaky Zeke went with him to Ohio, and he pushed Jewels to be a better rapper. Jim Jones said with Flex, he said basically, Camron liked to have someone boss around. Camron said, I didn't like bossing Jewels around. I saw a lot of potential in Jewels, and I pushed him to his furthest potential. I made him rhyme, made him freestyle, made him exercise his talents to be the man he is today, right? So the Freaky Zeke's running the club. They're making a lot of money. They go back to New York. Camron is pushing Jewels to get signed to Rockefeller. And they didn't want to sign him, but then eventually he got him a deal with Def Jam. And he was also pushing to get Jim Jones' side. He said Jim can rhyme too, because, he knew from Mace, right? But he gave Jim his props, and he said, Jim was the one that went over to Koch and brought us over to Koch. And I did, a Koch deal with Dipset mixtapes with Duke the God, which is his cousin, and Jim Jones did his deal up there. And Camron said, how could I have stolen? Now, Jim Jones said Cam had stolen money from him. He found out from a lawyer or something. He found out Camron was robbing him. Camron said, how could I rob Jim Jones when I had no paperwork on him? That was my boy. I wanted to see him do well. He signed straight to Koch. I just told him, yo, let me eat a little bit on the first album, then you do you. That's love. He also said, I met Hell Rel, J.R. Ryder, and everybody else through Luque Brasi, not Jim Jones. It was Luque Brasi that brought these people to the table. I think even 40 Cal, right? So, he didn't sign them to any paperwork. He let them go to Baby Grand and do deals with Baby Grand and get money over there. So he said, how am I a hater when I want to see everyone succeed? And then he said, the moment where our relationship went downhill, he said, our relationship went downhill when he met Chrissy, a girl from Harlem that he always wanted, and he started tricking on her right away. And, he said, this is my man. We fucking girls together. We, do everything together. And we snap on each other. So I was snapping on him like, oh, you tricking. And he made a shirt called like Jim Jones Trick Daddy or something like that. And had made shirts for everybody to wear around Jim Jones, and he was teasing them. And he said I was wrong for this because I didn't know how much he really loved her and how to see where their relationship went. I was wrong for that, and I admit that, but I noticed that's where our friendship went downhill, because after that, Jim Jones came to Camron and was like, yo, let's start a fake beef to get the hype going. And Camron wasn't with that to confuse the fans. He was like, yo, I don't want to make them pick sides. I'm not with all that. Then he noticed funny moves later where, Max B, who's from, Camron said was from his building, Charlie, right? He called him Charlie. He said, Max B kept going, was known for being the funny guy, right, in the building, and the guy that goes in and out of jail. And all of a sudden, one day, Charlie came to Camron and said he wanted to rap. Yo, sign me, and da-da-da. And Camron said, nah. He didn't take him seriously because that's from his building. He just, everybody probably comes to Cam and asks him for a deal. Well, Jim Jones ended up signing Max B, telling Jim, that was fine with him, right? Because, he knew he didn't believe in Max B. He didn't see it. Jim Jones saw it, right? But then Stack Bundles went over there. That's fine too. But everyone was wearing Bird Gang shirts and not Dipset. And Camron had a vision to set up Dipset like a Rockefeller. Everybody's under the same umbrella. All problems are internal, and you don't let anybody else know. You build a strong brand, and you can sell it for like $100 million. Well, Jim Jones was going left because he saw the whole Bird Gang stuff out, and that he also saw Stack Bundles and Max B. They were never coming out, but everybody that Camron fucked with was coming out, like 40 Cal, Hell Rel. They were coming out with albums. J.R. Ryder, Jim Jones, Joel Santana. But when Jim Jones signed these artists, they were never coming out. They were just working on Jim Jones projects. And then he also noted that Max B came to him one day, to Camron, and said, yo, I want to get signed by you, man. Let me go. And he said, no, you're his artist, bro. You can't come over here. But, the fact that, Max B wanted to go because that's where everything started. Jim Jones wasn't letting Max B come out with music. He was just like, keep him in the sweatshop, the Jim Jones sweatshop, making Jim Jones albums, and he was bitter about that. And that's why the whole thing happened with Chrissy touching in Miami and all that stuff. So then he saw he was going with Bird Gang, so Camron said, I copyrighted Bird Gang just to see if he was going to go left, because then he would have to come to me for the copyright. I just, played safety. Because I was cool with him setting up another company, but he just had to be upfront with me. Because when I asked him, he said, "Are you starting up another record company?" He said, "No, I'm just doing like a T-shirt line." Like tried to keep him at bay, but later, look, he did Bird Gang, right? So then, after that, Ballin' came out, right? Now, mind you, Camron was over there at Koch. They wanted to go with another record. He was trying to push Ballin'. Camron was advising to push Ballin'. They pushed Ballin', and it worked, right? Well, what happened was around that time, Jim Jones was having a beef with True Life. And remember, True Life robbed Jim Jones for his chain and all that. And Camron wasn't so aware of this beef that was going on. So Camron was out at the club one day and ran into True Life, and True Life started up with him, and they had an altercation. And then around that time, remember, Jim Jones was mad about the T-shirt thing. He went right to Miss Info and said Camron's on punishment. And Camron was like, "What? I'm on punishment? I'm the boss of Dipset. How are you gonna say I'm on punishment?" But Jim Jones was feeling himself from Ballin', okay? And then a week later, remember this, Camron's mom had a heart attack or something like that, and she didn't die. He took her to Fort Lauderdale and made sure she got the best specialist, so she could make it through having heart problems. And, that's why he disappeared for a while. People thought he ran away because of the whole... nobody knew what was going on, after that altercation with True Life, he disappeared, but it was because of his mother. And that's where Jim Jones, ran amok for a couple months. Then also, he also mentioned with the 50 Cent thing, we saw Camron and 50 Cent together recently, and he said, I had a long conversation with 50 Cent, and he's like, Jim Jones is a real strategist, but so am I. 50 said this to Cam. He said, because, your hype man had a hit record, and, became, Bird Gang, right? So he was strategizing this the whole time. So when we had a beef, I, put my reel out. I, cast my reel and said, and demoted you and upgraded Jim Jones in my song. If you remember, he said, Camron is not the head of Dipset. Jim Jones is now the head of Dipset. Well, Jim Jones took that bait, because remember, he showed up with 50 Cent on BET Rap Basement, and when Camron was having a beef with 50 Cent, which showed real disloyalty, okay? He also said around this time, Camron said he had a fallout with Joel's about something. I think it was something over a contract or something. So Joel's and him weren't fucking with each other. Joel's started fucking with Jim Jones more. I remember this because I was around this time. I was also around at the Old Boy video. But anyways, I was around during this time, and Joel's was hanging out with Jim Jones more. And Jim Jones called Cam before they had their problem. He was like, yo, Joel's keeps hanging out with me. Are you having a problem? He said, yeah, we're having a little problem. And that's where their relationship got strong. Then, on top of that, he said he was done with Jim Jones when, he was taking shots at him on Instagram all the time whenever he'd post a picture up with Mandese's. Now, Jim Jones had a problem. Camron even had Mandese's call in, okay, from jail. Mandese's had a problem with Jim Jones over the Love and Hip Hop thing. Like, first, Max B was cool with Mandese's a while back, and Jim Jones wanted to start hanging out with Mandese's. Mandese's like a street dude, right? And Max B was like, yo, Mandese's, Jim Jones wants to hang out with you. He was like, why? And he's like, he just wants to hang out. And he was like, I'm not with all that. So when they, on Love and Hip Hop, Mandese's girl and Jim Jones' girl had a problem, and Jim Jones' girl was going to get Mandese's girl jumped or something like that, and Mandese's went down to the hotel to protect his girl. And then he said, yo, we'll settle this. This was in Miami. That whole incident happened in Miami. So when they got back to New York, Mandese said, we'll settle in New York. Jim Jones came down to squash the beef at Mandese's projects, but he started yelling and arguing with Mandese's people and took off his jacket. And he said when he took off his jacket, that was a problem. My people, ran up on him, and I never seen someone run so fast down the block. He ran away, threw his jacket, and then he went on misinfo and said we robbed him when we didn't. We really were there to settle it. And then he ended up squashing the beef through D from Rough Riders, a mutual friend of theirs, Mandese and Jim Jones. D's an official guy. Cam went on to say, the whole Rucker incident, that was over Jim Jones. Some guy named Gutta came up, I think he was from part of Junior Mafia, came up and snuffed Jim Jones, and it turned crazy, and he said, notice nobody was chasing me in that park. And he said, shout out to Little C's, we're cool now, but in that video, he was saying people were chasing me. Nobody was chasing me, they were chasing Jim Jones. And another thing he highlighted was Jim Jones saying he's on America's Most Wanted and shootouts over Camron. He said that had nothing to do with you. He said Google the name. He said Carlos Thompson. Okay, he said Google the name Carlos Thompson. I'll wait. And then all these news articles came up. It said breaking Dipset enforcer arrested after 3-year police hunt, murder charges involving Diplomat mixtapes. Okay, so Camron said he had an altercation in Harlem. Him and his homie Huddy Six, which is Camron's homie, and a guy named Benji, I think, or Benny. They were up there and they had a problem with some other people, and then this other guy came up and shot up places, I guess, and his name was Carlos Thompson. He's arrested, but he was on America's Most Wanted. And when they do the reenactment, they had a guy that looked like Jim Jones, but it wasn't. Jim Jones had nothing to do with that, so Jim Jones wasn't on America's Most Wanted. He also said that the time that really broke everything is when, Camron was cool with Mandese's for a long time too. And whenever, Jim Jones had his problem with Mandese's, whenever Jewels would post a picture with him and Mandese's, no problem. But whenever Camron would post a picture with him and Mandese's, it was a really big problem. And, he was writing like, why are you hanging out with snitches under Camron's photos? And he was like, that's when I blocked them, because why are you talking about snitching underneath my picture? It looks weak. And then also in the Flex interview, if you don't remember, Flex brought that up, and Jim was like, I don't know what Camron is, but he's a water sign. He was kind of alluding that Camron's a snitch or something, or he hangs out with, I don't know, it was really weak. But then Camron, that's the gist of it, okay? Camron kind of debunked everything Jim Jones said, but he said, this all really started over a t-shirt I made calling Jim Jones, Trick Daddy over Chrissy, and I'm sorry about that. And, he ended it on a high note, and he said, I wish Jim Jones the best. Even if we don't do business ever again, I wish him the best for everything. I didn't even want to do this. I don't like spilling all this business out. This is supposed to remain private, but Jim Jones made it public, and I'm forced to have to defend myself. So that's basically everything in a nutshell. He saluted everybody that helped build Dipset, but he also made the point of, everyone can build the house, but it matters who owns the land, meaning who owns the trademark. And, Camron owns the trademark to Dipset. So he salutes everyone. They all made money building the house, but Camron owns the land that the house sits on, and that's most important. This is the basic things, so Camron never ripped off Jim Jones. He said Jim Jones carried guns around. He said, I was the one who carried the guns around, not Jim Jones. He said, we can't both be carrying guns because who's going to bail who out, if we're both in prison, so he said, or in jail. So, and he said, look up my gun charges. I have gun charges behind that. So, the proof is in the pudding. So Jim Jones looks crazy right now, but I salute Jim Jones for his deal with Roc Nation, just like Camron does. Get your money, bro. And salute Camron. I salute everybody. Hellrell, everybody, man. Dipset's amazing, what they built, and Jewels keep making that great music. I appreciate you guys for listening. I just wanted to wrap everything up for you guys. I appreciate you, and that's it. I'm out. Make sure you like this video. Jordan Films. Jordan Tower Films.